Welcome, everybody. This is the Fall Line with Chaos and Company, and I am Dave Caper, and I am here with my co-host, Angela Ross, and we have a great podcast here for you today. Before we get started, we'd like to thank our sponsors and the friends of the podcast, and thank you to Blizzard Technica for supporting us for now the fourth year in a row, Angelo, and Nick's Boot Fitting over at Mount Snow. Nick Blaylock and his crew, always supportive of us, and if you need your boots done, you better get over this. Snow is coming. And also Rollerblade keeping us going during the summer, so they've been pretty cool there. And we are ready to roll. Angelo, it's been super busy. It's great that we finally got the podcast going again. You've been all over the country for a couple weeks. I got to ski out there with you on telly. Must be nice to be home for a night.
Home for a night. Yep. Back out in the morning. Yeah, we had to go the whole way to Loveland to ski together.
Yes, I know. Can't ski in the East. We got to go to Loveland out there. And thanks to our guest who made that possible, Dana Forbes, the CEO of Rocky Mountain Division of PSIA-AASI, is here with us today. So we are super excited to have her. And we got back from, you went to team training, Angelo. You went to Rocky Mountain Alpine, then Rocky Mountain Telly. And I got to go out. This is my second year going out to Rocky Mountain Telly. And was super awesome. Dana, thank you so much for the way you set that up with training. I think you had Intermountain and Rocky were together for Alpine this year. So
we did Alpine and snowboard. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. So you've been pretty busy bringing in not just your division, your region, but inviting everybody else in there. That's pretty cool how you set that up.
Yep. The more the merrier. It's just how I am.
That's awesome.
I like a big party, Dave.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, that's one of the biggest. I mean, we had, I think, 30 telemark ed staff together. I mean, that was pretty cool from, I think, 6 regions out of the 8. Jim Shaw keeps pushing. He said he's going to keep going until it's so big you say stop.
Hopefully, I don't think we'll ever get too big. I'm just going to say that right now. I don't think we can ever have too many. So,
yeah. So it's cool to have you on. And, the first question I always ask our guests that they're on here first, and it's because our listeners love this one. It was one I threw on there way back in season 1, and everybody loves to know how it started. You know, when did you learn how to ski? Was it with family, friends? And I do have a little bit on this. I know this is a great story because I've heard you tell it. I saw something on the internet. If they haven't seen it, this is a super cool story of how you learned how to ski.
Yeah, I was actually pretty young. I was 3, and my dad took my sister and I skiing at a small mountain in Pennsylvania. And my sister was like 3 years older than me, but unfortunately, she wasn't nearly as athletic as I was. And so he and she were spending a little more time than apparently I was okay with. And so I waited for a bit, and then my dad said that I just took off and like skied to the bottom. And I'm sure this was like a 300, it was a little tiny 300 vertical foot, beginner hill. And I just sent it. And, my dad caught up to me and we tried this again. But the next time I apparently got impatient. And next thing he knew, I was on the chairlift by myself, leaning over, yelling, "Hi, Dad, hi, Dad." And he was not all that happy about that because I was young and I had never even seen a chairlift, but just went ahead and got on it. And then this happened a couple of times until he finally caught up to me and grabbed the back of my jacket and was like, "You can't do that." But my sister was just too slow for me. So I did it one more time until he promptly decided to go out to the car. And when he went to leave, I started to head back to the chairlift. Again, this is all his words, his story. In fact, he just told it to my kids last week when he was here visiting. And he came and he took away a ski. And he said then he went to walk into the parking lot, and I started to head to the chairlift with one ski on because I was just so excited and wanted to go again. And finally he took the other ski, and I waited there with my sister, who was crying and, just all upset because she didn't really like it. And when he came back, he had something with him, and I was really confused. I was like, "Why does Dad have a rope?" And so I spent the rest of the day tied to a rope so that I wouldn't ride the chairlift anymore by myself. But so no formal lessons early on. But then later on, after we moved to Connecticut, we went to Vermont regularly, and I learned how to ski mainly in we were at Bromley and then Stratton, Vermont. And Wendy would, from the ski school in Stratton, he was a legend, would greet us all, and making it to the Mountain Masters was our goal. So, yep.
That's cool. And after that, like, how did you start into teaching? Like, from learning how to ski at Stratton and going through the ski schools there and Bromley?
Well, my first teaching experience, we say, was when I taught my mom. So my mom was an adult that learned how to ski, like, in her 20s, because my dad skied. And when we would go to Stratton, we'd have a week of lessons, but on the very last day, we got to go ski with our families. And there was always 3 families. We'd rent a house and we'd go ski together. And my mom was by far the weakest skier of the bunch. And at one point, we ended up on this bump run. And I can remember this because I would say I was probably 8 or 10. And I just see everybody, all these people I love, skiing through these bumps, going over these giant moguls. And I think it's so cool, but I just had this sense that I needed to stop. And I stopped and I turned around and my mom was behind me and she was just frozen on top of this bump. And, she had these big mittens on. I will never forget. They were like the size of oven mitts and her mascara was about down to her chin and she's wiping her face and she's crying. And I'm like, Mom, what's the matter? And she's like, I can't do this. And I was like, what do you mean you can't do this? She's like, I can't ski this. And I looked behind her and I go, well, what do you mean? You just skied like 10 bumps. She's like, yeah, but I can't do it anymore. And I'm like, yes, you can. Like, we're going to do one bump at a time. And like 10 hours later, we made it to the bottom, but she did. And, she said that was just the moment she knew I was probably going to be a teacher. But it wasn't until I was 15 and living by the Poconos that I ended up in a junior hiring course because my dad was, I think, trying to get rid of me. Honestly, he needed me to get some of my energy out. He heard about the course at Gallagher Ski Shop in Dallas, Pennsylvania, and Phil Gallagher is still a member, which is crazy. He's out here in Vail, and they sent me to this hiring course a day late, but they took me and I went through the hiring course for a couple of days at Big Boulder Jack Frost Resort in the Poconos. And they hired me, which was pretty surprising because I was a terrible skier in comparison. Yeah. So I thought.
So a few bumps there for your mom and you coached her through with, just getting by one bump at a time. And that's, I think, something, Angelo, we talk about a lot. People think there's no bumps in the roads for any of us, but, what have been some of the bumps in the road? Did you have some bumps in the road going through cert process or any bumps? I mean, from there to becoming CEO of the Rocky Mountain region?
We could call them about bumps of opportunity. That's what I like to look at, Dave. Yeah. Because honestly, like, I think anytime I've hit like an obstacle, I just kind of clawed my way over it in a way like my mom did. Just you gotta keep moving through it. I definitely struggled through the certification process. As I mentioned, I wasn't a strong skier. I mean, I was a good skier, but I wasn't strong. I looked like I was milking elephants when I skied. My pole plants were fierce and excitable. And so, when I went through my level 1, it's funny that we're bringing back the center line because I can remember the day before the level 1, we called him Full Cert Phil, and he was standing out there drawing this line in the snow and talking about the center line. And I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about. We hadn't really trained. And then I'm like terrified. I'm thinking, I have to go and take this exam and I don't even know what I'm doing. But I did fine. I took a few days off of school and got my level 1 at the time. It was, actually, it wasn't level 1 yet. I don't think it was called registered. Yeah. What was it originally called? I'm having a brain cramp.
I went through registered myself. I think, Angela, you did too, right?
Maybe it was registered. Yeah. And that was fine. But then as I started towards my level 2 and level 3 journey, I was already in supervision. At a pretty young age, I started supervising in the kids ski school. And definitely will say, I think my challenge was that, when you're in management, it's hard to get as much time on snow. And so I was, I will say, not unsuccessful, but I wasn't quite ready the first time I took my level 2. And so I got the opportunity to go back and do it again, which was probably the first time I realized the commitment that you needed to make to your own self-development, that you can't just show up, that there are things that I needed to do and there were movement patterns I needed to change. And it took a big commitment to fixing those, but it just meant I got to ski more, and I did. And it meant that I got to read and understand and teach more, which is what I love to do. Same thing happened at my level 3. I was unsuccessful on the ski day, my first go around. We were at Stowe, Vermont in the spring. And I remember we went there to check it out and warm up. And I got in the car and I said, there is no way I am passing on that mountain in those conditions tomorrow. And it wasn't a bad attitude. I just was like, I knew I was pretty self-aware and knew I wasn't ready. But I would say probably from level 1 to level 3, it took me 12 years, which is very, in some worlds, very long. Here in Rocky, we see people go through, those 3 levels of certification in 2 or 3 years. And that just wasn't my path. But so it was a slower journey for me.
Yeah. Has that shaped you a little bit in empathy and understanding? Because, you said that, the managers, even being young, a young manager in the ski school, as they want to jump up, I think it must give some empathy for you to understand your members in your region.
Oh, absolutely. I just got back yesterday. We had our member school management and resort trainer event over in Breckenridge. And I love to do my little talks. And at the beginning, I talked about just that, like how once you are in management, even if it's as a trainer, it is hard to get that time for yourself. And, I really encourage them, we're all excited at the beginning of the year we're like, oh, we're going to spend like a couple hours out there, training every day. And we have these mad goals, right? And I think Christmas hits and then we're just like, things get in the way of that, that goal of 2 hours, giving yourself the training. And, I encourage them. I said, set a high bar and a low bar. And maybe the high bar is that 2 hours. It's an hour on snow. It's 15 minutes of reading and studying. It's 15 minutes working with your mentor and maybe a half an hour of physical training, working out in the gym. I'm like, but then set a low bar. And maybe that low bar is 1 run on the beginner hill, working on something. And I said, if you do that and every day you commit to that, not only is it going to help you, but it's going to inspire those that are around you, that are watching you on your journey, and we really look to our resort trainers as being like our biggest influencers. And so, I can definitely empathize, but I can also encourage and give some tips to get them through.
Yeah. And I've heard that, you're definitely put your staff, your educators, your education staff number 1 in your priority list. And I'm just curious of how you feel that way and what you think about that. Because I know Angela and I talk a lot about that the ed staff is the product, is the people that are out there giving the education, giving the certification exams, trying to motivate. And I'm just curious your philosophy on that, how you put them first.
I mean, where are we without our people? And I mean that in regards to the entire organization. We have not only an incredible ed staff, but we have this onslaught of volunteers who put so much time and energy into the organization. We have our boards, we have our administration, and it really is the people that have to, want to make us great. And they do. I mean, when I moved here to Rocky and I was in the East and had my experiences there as well. And I saw the dedication that our education staff has to the processes and the interactions on snow. Like, it was so inspiring. And to your point, they are the product. We can buy banners and things to like promote, what we do in PSIA-AASI, but it's really the people and those interactions that are going to inspire and excite our membership. And so to me, putting the time, energy, and resources into them is what's going to make people believe in what we do and want to do this.
Yeah. And I know you have, because it's right on your website of Rocky Mountain, you have kind of the hiring philosophy and how you pick people for, whether it's in your office staff or your ed staff, that you have kind of a humble, hungry, and happy thought process.
So I stole that from this incredible book, and I will make this recommendation. I'll give a shout out. It's called The Ideal Team Player. And I read it and listened to it. I read it again, maybe about 10 years ago. And those 3 virtues, as we call them, became more and more apparent every time I read the book and I thought about all the years I spent as a ski school director and or even in this business, where you would hire somebody who was super likable and they seemed really excited about it, but there was just something missing, right? Something would happen that they didn't quite fit in. And it was usually that they were missing one of those virtues. In this business, whether you're an instructor or whether you're, one of our ed staff, it is incredibly important to be humble, to have a growth mindset, to go back out there and try again, and to get feedback and receive that feedback And if somebody doesn't do that, then they're not going to be the right fit for your ski school and or for our education staff. Hunger is something that, and we can all relate to this a little bit, right? As we get into the business and we start to become a little bit more successful, and we start to maybe get some of those private requests, and things shift a little bit for us. Sometimes the hunger of wanting to be a part of something bigger becomes selfish, right? And all of a sudden it's just about us getting what we want for ourselves. And that doesn't work for an organization. It doesn't work for a ski school. We need to be a team. And so you need somebody who's going to be hungry for the success of, in our case, the organization. And then the last one, happy, is really referring to emotional intelligence. We need to be able to connect. And you used the word empathy before. We need to have empathy. We need to have, the attributes necessary to connect with, in our case, our members, on snow, and in instructors' cases with their clients. And so I would like kind of think back, okay, who was somebody that I had hired that we just didn't have great success with? And it was usually that they just didn't possess one of those virtues. And it didn't matter if they, were, they had a growth mindset and they were constantly out there training and getting better at that. And even if they had the best personality in the world, if they were selfish and hungry for themselves, it just didn't work. It didn't work for the team. And so when we interview and hire our education staff, yes, there is an on-snow process to that. There is a level of proficiency they need to have in regards to their technical and teaching and sliding attributes. But I won't hire somebody unless they possess all those virtues and are aware of them. And even if they have one that's a little bit weaker, are willing to work on them.
And I'm betting my buddy who's shaking his head there, my co-host, he's probably read that book you stole that from, knowing him. Have you, Angela? No. Did I find something you haven't read?
Yeah. Yeah. The more I talk, the more people realize how little I've actually read in my life.
I don't know about that.
But I couldn't agree more. I did write it down. But like I was thinking as you were saying that, Dana, we're so lucky in a lot of ways. We get to go to some of the most beautiful places in the country, some of the most beautiful places in the world, and ski. And how lucky are we to be able to do that? But when you take the route that we've taken, this route of being a snow sports instructor, it's really kind of signing up for the hard way, right? Because you're not gonna make a gazillion dollars doing it. And like I'm reminded of what Pete Howard says, there's a lot of driving at night. It's just it's a hard, rugged road with setbacks sometimes through the process that hits you right in the guts, because we do take it so personally. Because I think to have those attributes you identified, Dana, humble, happy, and hungry, I wrote down the word intrinsic under that. It's internal and it's real. And so when you have those setbacks, it's really a personal setback that you have to overcome. It's a hard route to get there, but aren't we lucky to be involved with it?
Sure.
Yeah, it's cool. And that kind of leads me into, I've been on the board of directors here for a term in the East, and I know that the board gets to set the goals for the CEO, and the CEO has to follow those and try to reach those. And those are absolutely some things I guarantee you measure for success. But are there some other things that you, as the CEO of Rocky Mountain, look at? Like, what are some of the things that you look at for, say, hey, we're successful this season, we were able to do this, or numbers are showing this? So there's some things outside the ends and the goals from the board that you strive for the members that maybe not on that list, and maybe be asking you like, I don't want to tell that because then the board's going to make me do that too.
No, I don't know how well you know me, Dave, because I'm not really good at doing anything I'm told. I kind of make up my own rules. Kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kind of from the philosophy that, which is probably different than some of my counterparts across the country, and even with, like you said, those board goals, is I don't care about membership numbers. I don't care how many members we have. What I want, to me, success is that every single member understands and values why they're a member. And that is primarily because of the education that we provide, and the personal connections that we provide, the growth opportunities that we provide for them. To me, that is success. And so when I see success in, say, our event numbers, like the average member only needs to go to a clinic every other year or one day a year for continuing ed. what's really great in Rocky, and when I see our members are going annually to multiple days, and they're just calling here and saying, well, I just want to do that because it's so great. I really value what I'm getting out of my experience on snow. Then I'm like, yes, that's what I want.
Yeah.
And to me, that defines success. It's not a dollar amount. It's not a membership number. It is when I hear things like that from our members, or when I hear from a member, hey, I just took my level 2. And while I was unsuccessful, I had the best experience of my life. I felt supported. I felt inspired. I felt like I had this equal opportunity with everyone, and I'm excited to go back and practice some more. It's things like that define success for me.
You must like that, Angelo, because Angelo he might not admit it, and he might not even admit it now, but he is full on into the strategic alignment that is, really working on our CERT process and that. But he is, I believe, I know him pretty well. He's an educator at heart, and that makes you feel good, doesn't it, Angelo, hearing that?
It does. And I think we all probably connect with that idea, because I had some bumps in the road along the way, and it never dawned on me to not try again. I like immediately looked in the mirror and tried to figure out what I needed to do to progress, because the people that were, like, for lack of a better word, the people who failed me, but when meanwhile they didn't fail me, I didn't meet a standard, but the people whose names were on those scorecards are people that I'm still friends with, and I wanted to be involved with them. And I think, like, even through the setbacks, that was still the goal. And like specific names, like we mentioned Bob Shostak before we started to record, and Lanny Tapley and Peter Stransky and Peter Palmer and Steve Moore, the earliest names on my scorecard. I knew that even despite the setbacks, I wanted to still try again and get to know those folks. And that speaks to the strength of the strength and the values of the association more than anything. I always felt like it was fair. I always felt like it was quality. And so I continued to chase it. And I think a lot of our members connect with that. That's a testament to really what's going on. As you say, Dana, it's really about the people.
Yeah. And I would say someone on that list, Angelo, that kind of shows that you said, you never thought of giving up. You just figured out, what am I going to do next time, was Kevin Jordan. Jordan with his national team tryouts.
Yeah.
I mean, he says that they barely told him he hadn't made the team, and he's already got his plan going together for 4 years down the road.
Yeah.
And it's pretty impressive when he talks about that story. And, he had that same kind of mindset, that he was just going to move forward. Okay, what do I got to do? What do I got to do to make this thing? It was really cool. And I think that's really shaped him into a pretty special dude right now.
It's pretty easy to dismiss an organization when you're not successful and blame something external. But think of, like, just to put that in perspective, Kevin tried out for the national team for 16 years, right? He went to 4 tryouts, right? Can you imagine, like, that level of dedication? When you see that going on, you have to ask, like, or you have to suspect there's value there for somebody to chase something that hard. Like, kudos to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I watched Kevin, I watched his very first one, his next one, and, all of them. And you're right. Yep.
Yeah. It's pretty cool to see where he's at and what he's contributing. He did that whole time. Some people don't think you're contributing while you're going through that process, but he does. And now it's amazing, the cool things he's doing and being a part of. And, so yeah, and when we think about that, he's out there on the Rocky Mountain staff, and I do a little research, of whoever we have on here, try to search around and find some things out. And, we with the strategic alignment, I'm curious as to, because I mean, you can't look online and go, hey, what are your thoughts on that? But when we come to the strategic alignment, of trying to get everything together with all 8 regions, what is your thought process on that, and how are you using your management style with your crew to make that possible?
Ooh, it's a big question. So for those who are listening who might not know or understand what alignment is, right now the country is working together across all 8 regions and with the Lakewood office to align all of our processes and our policies, because unfortunately, right now, we're not the same. And, for over 70 years, we have operated, and in some ways, things that we do are the same, and in some ways, things that we do are not. And so the drive behind that is, who are we? How can we call ourselves a consistent credentialing organization if we're not consistent? Right. And so the drive behind that is to get consistency in our members' experience, be it through what they pay in their dues, to be it through their level 1, 2, and 3 process, to how they're treated, to how our ed staff is hired, everything, every little thing that we do, we want to create the best experience possible for whoever that member and or that employee is, right? So, because all of our ed staff are members as well. And so there's a huge driving force behind it. And to be, honest, it dates back. I found things from back in the 60s where, we wanted to align. We wanted to truly align. And when we think about when we were formed, I always joke that it was probably an instructor from Taos sitting on a bar stool next to an instructor from Vail, and they're talking about, what method they used. And, 70 years ago, well, I teach the French way and I teach the Swiss way. And, we should probably create an American teaching system, which we did. And we did that, but then we kind of lived in our own silos. At the time, it was 9 regions, but we lived in our own silos, and our interpretation of that teaching system was left up to those individual regions. And there wasn't a lot of this sharing of and watching and seeing what one another was doing. And so for several decades, it was this, we should do this, we should do this. And we gave up too many times. And when I came into this position, I immediately noticed that just seems so inefficient and ineffective. What can we do? And while alignment has really been a huge focus the last 3 years, I would say that it started over 14 or 15 years ago when Dave Schuling, who's the Director of Education and Credentialing at the national office, who works with Angelo, when he was working as our Director of Education in Rocky, we started the Examiner Exchange. And that was in an effort to just see what's going on over there in New Hampshire, and what's going on over there, in Tahoe, and what are we doing and how does it differ? And that was a big eye opener. But at the time, again, we're 8, 9 different businesses. And so it's not like we can say, the way you're doing it is maybe wrong and the way we're doing it is right, or vice versa. Instead, it was really just a great opportunity for examiners around the country to come see what Rocky does in their process, and for our examiners to go out to the other regions to see how those processes look, and just take the bits and pieces that you think would make your processes better. So Rocky would steal a little nugget from the East or steal a little nugget from the West, and vice versa, and so then it was just very organic. But it was very eye-opening. And so we realized through that, wow, we have everything from a 1-day level 1 to a 3-day level 1. And, and to the membership that's out there listening to this, that's kind of really that happens. And it does. Now, granted, that 1-day level 1, it doesn't mean that it didn't come with a different level of prep to maybe what that 3-day level 1 is, but aligning those processes, has become more and more important to us as a credentialing body. And so we have taken this to a whole new level. It is beyond just our assessments. It goes into the pathway to our assessments, like our prerequisites, to what is happening administratively, to anything from our cancellation policy to our dues rates. And then even with our governance, our policy, or not policy governance, but our governance group, which would be our boards, trying to see how they're formed and structured and things like that. And it is a lot of work, but it's necessary work. And a couple of years ago, we made a really concerted effort to say we're going to do it this time. And I would say on the back end, this country has hundreds of volunteers working diligently day in and day out to make that happen. And we are finding great success in getting there. Our goal is May of 2026 to be aligned with, I would say, probably 80 to 90% of what we do, from your on-snow experience to your experience on the back end, whether that's registering for an event or, calling an office and things like that. So with that, I have to say to the membership and the people that are listening, that's going to be all of a sudden things are going to start to change. There's going to be these changes that are going to happen within your region, which could be like, whoa, wait, my dues just went up by $5, or my dues just went up or went down. I mean, because again, we need consistency in how we service our members. Our members deserve the same experience no matter where they are in the country. And so that is why this is so important. But again, you're going to see it and feel it in different ways. And we were just at staff training and we talked about this. I encouraged our staff to be curious, not judgmental. I'm going to encourage the members when they see these changes and feel these changes to ask questions. So why did my dues go up, or why did the level 1 change from 2 days to 3 days, or something like that? And you're going to get the right answers to make you feel like what you're a part of, that this organization is doing everything that they can to make your credentialing as top end as it can.
Yeah. And as a CEO, I would assume you've had to empower a lot of people and give them some freedom, because there is a lot of task forces. Angelo is on, I don't know how many, it was 38, but now what is it, 82? How many base camp groups do you have for task forces?
I'm
base camp.
Not actually on any task forces, but I work with the majority of them. And I think at last time I looked, I was on 43 base camps. Which is approximately half of what Scholling's on, just for
But that shows what Dana's talking about. There is a ton of members from ed staff, not on ed staff, that are part of these task forces and committees that are working on different aspects of this, and then reporting up the chain all the way up to the CEOs. And so that's got to be a lot of, as a CEO, I'm curious, like there's a lot going on below you that then it all comes from the different places. And then the CEOs get together to figure this stuff out. So it's got to be a lot of stuff coming fast at times.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work for sure. But, again, it goes back to the people. Like, I can't appreciate the people that are a part of this organization more. I mean, it is, my heart just like leaps out of my chest when I see the hard work and the dedication that's happening from all of those task forces that Angelo just referred to. And I think that's where, again, where we're really fortunate as an organization to have those volunteers. And so when we talk about like my management style or what matters to me and what matters to the CEOs is we do have shared values. And, we need, part of that is empowering and believing in the expertise of the people that we have put on those task forces. So it's not as hard maybe on the CEOs as you would think, because, we believe like, hey, I've put this person on this task force. I know that they can steer and make decisions based on conversations we've had in the past. They know what's important to us, what we value. And actually, as an entire country, it's getting easier and easier because our values are aligning more and more every day. And so I think empowerment, and you use that word, is critical. We can't sit here and micromanage and worry about every little thing. We have to say, hey, you're the expert in that field. You tell us what you recommend. And when you put 8 to 10 of our top adaptive educators in the country in a room together and they're developing a process or making a recommendation for change, you better believe I'm going to say, all right, if that's what the 10 of you have come together and said that, you recommend, I am going to support that, because quite frankly, I know that those 8 or 10 people had another 8 or 10 people under or around them that sat on their committees or whatever that also encouraged that. And so it's actually pretty easy because people are amazing.
Yeah, Angelo hears from all of me. Gets phone calls, emails. It's cool at sometimes, and then sometimes it's like, God, you just want to shut that off for 5 minutes, huh, Angelo?
And it's not like we all just agree. I would like to be very clear in that. I'm making it sound like, rainbows and butterflies, but I mean, there are some really tough discussions being had out there, and Angelo can attest to this. Like, if we as a country if you would have told us that the level 1 was going to be the biggest sticking point and the most difficult thing for us to agree and align on, I never would have guessed that. However, it speaks to the fact that this is our very first event for our new members, and it's it's probably next to the CS1, the Children's Specialist 1. Our most critical product, for the ski schools, and our ski schools are, our biggest stakeholder. And so it's been a really hot but important and amazing conversation to get us to where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah. Angela will tell you, I've been in some of those heated conversations because, yeah, I do have a few opinions. but it's good though. Go ahead, Angela.
Usually throwing logs on the fire.
Yes, I am good at that.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what's interesting is like, just as we've all come up through and been new instructors and then gotten older and more credentialed, and here we are. But I used to hear that stuff and probably say it way back in the day. Oh, what are they changing this year? That mentality that it changing things just for the sake of changing them. But like, as you get more involved at the regional level and then the national level, and just see how many days there actually are. And Dana's right. It's hundreds of people all making their best effort to push the association in a direction that at the end of the day, like where the rubber meets the road, it's just about providing better lessons across the country for people who take lessons from our certified pros. That at the end of the day, that's where it is, Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of telephone game, and sometimes disagreements, and sometimes, oh man, that's a great idea, but it's just not feasible. We got to, hook it back, throw the ingredients back in and cook up another one. But there's a lot happening. And right now it's happening a lot faster because we are approaching that deadline.
Yeah. Dave, I told a little story, and you weren't at this part of, our ed staff training, but I told a story. It's about this analogy from Les Brown, and it's about this ancient bamboo tree. And it's quite a process to grow this bamboo tree. And you prep the soil and you plant the seed. And for 5 years, you have to water the seed. And every single day you have to water it. Otherwise, it'll just die in the ground. But then after 5 years, sometime in the 5th year, it grows. So you see nothing above the surface for 5 years. You're just watering. And then all of a sudden it grows, and it actually grows 9 feet in 9 weeks. And so I asked the staff, do you think that tree took 9 weeks to grow? Or did it take 5 years and 9 weeks to grow? And obviously it took 5 years and 9 weeks to grow. And when we look at alignment, again, what the ed staff has seen, the majority of the ed staff who are not involved in these task force, what the membership is going to see, what the ski schools might feel, is that exponential, that growth of 9 feet in 9 weeks. But really, we've been watering the seed and working on this for decades, but for sure, very diligently over the last 5 years. And so that with that, again, comes a little bit of patience. And I like that story because also that really relates to what we do out on snow, right? I know there's a lot of people out there that are on their journey, through certification, and they're out there working. And sometimes you don't see and you don't feel the change immediately. But just remember, you just got to keep watering that seed. You can't give up, because if you give up, it will die on the vine, right? It will die in the ground. You need to keep committing to your growth, and eventually all of a sudden, boom, you will see it and it'll happen. And that turn will feel like you couldn't believe.
Yeah. And I'm curious of, I know that because I was able to come, I went last year, went this year to Rocky Mountain telemark ed staff training. And that's been something I think for a decade. Jim has got to you, and you've let him bring in staff from all across the country. And I've gone the last couple of years. And to me, that's one of the tools of the alignment process, being able to see other staff members from all the regions. We had 6 out of 8 for the telemark crew there for the 2 days. And I'm just curious of other tools or things you've had to do training wise, money wise, time. What are some of the things in Rocky you've done to try to help your ed staff work through this process to get ready for the strategic alignment?
Probably all of those things. There's tools, there's money, there's resources, there's conversations, there's education. It's all really mattered. And, I started this conversation with our staff 3 years ago, very open conversation that this is what's going on. And, Rocky kind of felt it and had the opportunity through the examiner exchange to feel, that, there were some differences, and to see the opportunities that existed. And that's why we really clung to, the continuing of inviting as many staff as we from other regions as we could get into the region, because we knew like we had this opportunity to bring us together and to make us even better. When you have those educators together, all those great minds, like you said, you had 6 or 7 different regions of teletraining, 30 people. I mean, how cool is that to be able to hear what somebody from across the country is working on? And, I'm just such a firm believer in that sharing that, I've been kind of preaching that for a long time. Like I said, we started it 14, 15 years ago. And that to me was probably the best thing we could dedicate our resources to. And that again, along with just being really open about it, and it didn't always work in my favor to be like that. When you talk about bumps in the road, Rocky was perceived as like thinking we wanted to consolidate or we wanted to tell everybody else what to do. And that is, and Angelo knows because he works on these task forces, that is absolutely the furthest thing from the truth. Rocky is really fortunate in that we have a lot of really great educators and a large education staff. So we have this large resource of people, and we didn't do it with any intent of again driving the end result. We did it with the intent of sharing and growing us as a country to rise us all up together. And so that's been that was a little bit challenging at first, because the different regions were like, well, wait a minute, are you trying to tell us what to do? We think we do it just fine. But I think when everybody came together, they're like, oh, wait, we could all do it a little bit better. And that's what's been so great. So it's been a lot of pushing of a rope at times, but it's been totally worth it. And so whether it was a financial commitment, my personal time and energy, communicating with the staff, having conversations with people around the country, it's all been worth it.
And I know education's important. I mean, it's interesting. A lot of our training right now, I know in the East and I know in the other regions, is for this. We're really focused on the alignment to the exam. And but when it comes to education, I've heard you even make a quote that they don't buy what you do, but why you do it. And I'm just curious if you tell our listeners a little bit about that and how you think it's important to know the why.
Well, that was from a Simon Sinek TED Talk, excuse me, as I try to say his name. And it's really true. I think people aren't successful if they're trying to sell something that they don't believe in. Right. And, I told that story about my mom and the tears and, that moment. And in that moment, and even in the moment, probably when I was 3, when I saw that my sister wasn't liking this, I felt threatened. I felt like, wait a minute. Like, I love to ski, and this is something that brings my family together. And if my mom doesn't want to do this, or if my sister doesn't want to do this, that's going to potentially take away my opportunity to do this. And I was on fire that very first run I did, right? Like, I was so excited about it. And so, I really believe my why is that, I want to make sure that everyone has that positive experience on the snow. It doesn't mean that skiing is for everybody. I mean, somebody might take their first lesson and have a great experience and never ski again because it wasn't for them. And again, that's fine. But what we want is for that experience to be so supportive and inclusive to whoever that front end user is that, the option then, the decision is then in their hands. And so, I think if every instructor or any instructor that's listening to this, or the education staff, yes, like, if you want to be successful in this, you have to know why you're doing it. You have to be doing it because of a reason, a love for education. And, I teach, I'm constantly teaching. I can't probably walk to my car without trying to teach a lesson, whether that's, bending over to pick up a piece of garbage to to be the example. Right. And so I've been teaching for 37 years and there's just no way around it. And I'm sure Angelo, I'm sure you both have the same issue. It's just so ingrained in us. And I think the longer you're a member and the more you teach, the more it just becomes so natural. And so when you think about the educational opportunities within the organization, I would really do encourage people to just maybe take a break from assessments for a second. If you're on that track, like I said, it took me 12 years. And in between, the best thing that I did was I just spent some time skiing and learning and growing. And I wasn't so focused on the end goal. And I know that's such a cliche that, it's about the journey. I really was focused on broadening in other areas. And I think that's really key. Like, I think we have to continue to be taught. Like, we have to always put ourselves in the position as a learner, and whether that's on the snow or in something else you do in life. As educators, that's really critical. But as members, again, who are going through the journey, and I'm not saying and I understand getting your level 2, your level 3, and all of your different certifications is really critical to maybe your success on snow. Well, for sure, your success on snow, but also I know it ties in some cases to your pay rate. But you don't want to lose your why. And you're going to lose your why if you spend too much time focused on this goal of a pin. All right. Spend some time just doing what you love, and that'll continue to allow you to revisit that why. It'll bring you back to why you're out there so that you never get burnt out. You never get tired of what you do on the hill.
Yeah. And this brings me to my question, Angelo, that Angelo will tell you. I mean, it's part of the podcast. It's why we do the podcast, that I wanted to do this. I'm always, I don't know what it is. I'm always thinking of ways of trying to create education that our members will want through, whether we're doing it here on Zoom with our podcast and trying to get them to think about different things, or meet people and see what they can achieve. But, our education, do you see us able, as we start to come together, the 8 regions, to still have some ability to create different products, or to create products that might be like Angelo? I know him and I have talked a bunch about more college type curriculum, in terms of, you don't just take one event. You got 4 events this year you could buy, and they're all in a certain thing, and they go in order for a certain curriculum. Or we have a Zoom call that leads up to, that kind of lays the groundwork for the event you're going to go to. I'm just curious if there's thoughts, or you have dreams of those kinds of things being possibilities.
Well, I think it'd be crazy if we didn't, right? Because when you think about, if everybody who's listening to this just thinks about something that they wanted to learn, something new that they went to learn, this one and done, go out there and try it once, is just, it's not the answer. And I think we do have a large contingency of our membership who go through their level 1, and then, in a lot of ways, they even allow their continuing ed to lapse, and they don't see the necessity of the continuing ed. But that to me is the absolute spot when you need to continue your journey. You need to go out there and keep practicing and trying, and not for, again, the goal of certification, but so that you have a track, and what I love, we do have some of these tracks, like our CS1, our children's specialist, our freestyle, our senior specialist. We have all these different opportunities that lay out there that allow us to take a track, just like you're in college. Hey, I want to major in this and maybe minor in that. But I do think that there's other opportunities with things that we do on snow, and I'll use East versus, say, Rocky. What's so cool is that members can go, they can travel to any region to take any event and get their continuing ed. And we have seen so much more of that back and forth. And, if a Rocky Mountain member called and they really wanted a good, I want to be on a racetrack, I want to go and I want to take some racing clinics. We don't even offer that in Rocky, but I would find a region maybe where we do, and no different than maybe there's not quite the tree skiing in the East that we do have here, say in Steamboat, where our offices are located. And so we want to encourage that. But then when you think about it, it's just, 1 or 2 days, tree skiing going to really change your tree skiing? Is there a prep course up to that? Like you said, is there a call that could happen that could talk about it, that could show some videos that could prepare you for that learning? Is there then a multi-step, multi-day, journey throughout a year or two where that is what you're trying to become proficient at? Or to your point, racing. There's GS, there's downhill, there's slalom. There's so many opportunities for that. And I think we limit ourselves when we just say, hey, we're just here for assessments, and then your random continuing ed in between. I think it would be really beneficial to some of our members to be able to have something that's a little bit more connected. And I believe in it for myself, just because I've had that journey. When I learned how to bow hunt, I didn't just study how to call an elk, and I had to then learn about how to do it with a deer or do it with an antelope. It's a different thing, but I couldn't just stop at one. I needed to widen my pathway there. And so Angelo is we've been talking about it. It's definitely something that's in the works. We are excited because we're looking at even a new member clinic that starts everybody's journey a little bit different than an assessment. We're going to beta test some of those this year, which I think will be great for, a new member to pop in and just feel welcome into this community, because an assessment can be intimidating. Whereas, hey, you're just going to come and hang out and ski or snowboard around or telly around with this, this person who happens to work for PSIA. It's just a lot less intimidating when it's an educational event versus an assessment.
So, and my last question for Dana, when it comes to setting goals and dreaming, what is Dana Forbes' advice to maybe not just that new member or someone going to level 2, 3, maybe even someone on your ed staff or someone just level 3 thinking of going to the national team? What is Dana Forbes' advice to that person of thinking about, how do I follow my dreams?
You have to work hard. Yeah. You have to be the hardest working person in the room. When you talked about Kevin Jordan earlier, right? You can't let bumps get in your way. You have to claw yourself to where you're going. In some cases, nothing worth having is going to come easily. And I've learned that in my journey for sure. I like I said, I was never a good skier. I did not plan. This wasn't my goal. I didn't sit there when I was 15 and became an instructor and said, someday I want to run a region of PSIA. It happened and it evolved. And even when I took this job, I didn't even know that this was my goal. And every single day that I work here and I commit myself to the staff, the membership, our growth, our opportunities to be the best organization we can, I realize that it's my goal more and more to be better and better. This is my 18th year in this position, and I haven't become stagnant because not only do I remember my why, but my goal is to just keep making it better. But that requires hard work. It requires watering the seed every single day and just never giving up and being willing to do whatever it takes to get there.
Angelo, anything to finish off?
I couldn't agree more. I was thinking we have people skills fundamentals. And as I look back and sort of think about how I got here, I agree with Dana. It's hard work. And sometimes the hardest work is breaking the inertia that you've got going on for yourself. I don't think it's a secret to anybody who listens to us with any regularity that I wasn't entirely happy in being a public school teacher toward the end. I really enjoyed it at first, but then got to the point where it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. But breaking that inertia was hard. It was much easier to just go back every year, but I encourage people to pay attention to what I call red flags. And that's not to imply, something bad's ahead of you. It's just like, pay attention to little things that interest you or move you. And then that's probably an area where you have some natural interest, like where you want to be headed. That, you got to break the inertia and head in that direction sometimes, and have a support system of people who can encourage you to do it. And I had Amanda. I was really lucky, and my parents encouraged me, and then you, Dave, and Matt and Jeb and Kathy Brennan and Murmur, and I could go on and name people, but sometimes you just got to take the chance and do it, and it was really remarkable to me when I was leaving and just after I left public ed, how many of my colleagues that I had taught with for, in some cases, like 20 years are like, oh, I can't believe, you had the guts to do that. And I didn't have the guts to stay and let it not work out for me anymore. I had to escape. And sometimes you just have to take a chance and do it. And if you take a chance and do it in this particular world during phase 2 of national strategic alignment, one thing I can guarantee is that there's plenty of work to be done. So we'll find something for you to do. Anyway, yeah, I agree with Dana. I think 18 years is your participation and your involvement is obvious, Dana. The way you talk about what goes on is really it sounds really smooth and informed. And it's impressive to hear you talk about where we've been, where we are, where we can go, but just how much potential there is to do things we haven't even thought of yet. That's
so much potential.
Yeah.
Cool. Dana Forbes, thank you so much for joining us. And as Angela and I always do, we may come again. We would love to have you back on at some point and talk about some other things going on. And so you always have an invite to come back. And thanks for taking the time for us. I know our listeners will love hearing what's going on in your perspective from the CEO spot of Rocky Mountain region of PSIA-AASI. Thanks so much.
Dave. Thanks, Angelo. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Thanks so much. You have a good day.
Thank you very much. This has been The Fall Line with Chaos and Company.